Even with Kentucky's difficult offseason, the saving grace has always been this loaded incoming number one overall freshman class. But now, even that is taking a hit. Big Blue Nation just can't catch a break.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? Welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, the only daily national college hoop show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shade, and I want to thank you for joining us for your first listen or watch of the day. Coming up on today's show, we do have more to unpack in the ongoing West Virginia saga, but man, we just got to get to Kentucky and some news that we actually wanted to talk about yesterday, but got superseded by the Bob Huggins saga. So some of this news technically came out over the weekend, late Friday, but we still want to make sure to get to it and talk about it because it is a massive conversation in national college basketball scene. So if you're here with us in late June, you are a college basketball junkie. So first off, thank you. It's so good to get to hang out and talk college basketball, even in the off season. You're a true homie. You're a real one. And we're glad you're here. But that means that you are well-versed and well aware of the struggles Kentucky has had this offseason. Not getting Oscar Tshiebwe back, not winning the Hunter Dickinson sweepstakes, losing different players to the NBA draft or to the transfer portal. But now, it just keeps on taking lumps. Kentucky has had the number one recruiting class in the nation, and that's been this fallback for Coach Cowell and the staff is like, yeah, things have been rough, but man, look at this class we got coming in. And folks, it really is just absolutely silly. This freshman class is loaded. Justin Edwards, Aaron Bradshaw, DJ Wagner. That's three of the top 6 players in the class, at least according to 247 Sports. Rob Dillingham coming from Overtime Elite after that stop off with Donda and Yee, right? Ugh, that whole fiasco. But anyway, now he's coming from Overtime Elite to Kentucky. Remember that Overtime Elite players, now they've created a second track where it's not just you get a salary. They have a scholarship track now where instead of being paid and turning into a professional, you can get a scholarship, maintain NCAA eligibility, and then come to college. That's what Dillingham is doing here. You get Reed Shepherd, like Kentucky royalty coming in. Just a week or so ago, Jordan Burks committed to Kentucky, further helping bolster the class. Although I do want to say more about that in a little bit. But now, here is the issue for Kentucky. And you just think it can't get any worse, right? And then something else breaks. It's like one of those movies. Like my friend Elijah, he can't watch movies like, what's the movie with Ben Stiller where Meet the Parents, right? Like he can't watch movies like that, or he hates Christmas Vacation because it's like things just keep going wrong, this comedy of errors. And it feels like that's what's happening now with Kentucky. They just, I can't fathom or comprehend it. But here's what happened over the weekend. We learned that Aaron Bradshaw, one of those 3 top 6 players in the class, a legit 7-foot center coming in, has a foot fracture and could miss the start of the season. And that's per Shams Charania, who does a great job covering the NBA, is an absolute stud, but obviously locked in on this because Bradshaw is a high-level 2024 predicted NBA draft like lottery pick, right? And so obviously Shams is in on that. Now, he said in a tweet, Shams did, the program is optimistic on Bradshaw having a full recovery. And so that is the hope. That's the expectation. But my mind immediately goes to Dariq Whitehead last offseason for Duke. Now, if I remember correctly, his foot injury, his foot fracture was a lot closer to the beginning of the season. But man, you are probably very well aware. He just at Duke in his one season at Duke was just never the Dariq Whitehead that we saw as a high school player. Like anytime I've talked NBA draft stuff, I've said, don't just, if you want to know about Dariq Whitehead, go watch his high school tape because that's the true Dariq Whitehead. Speaking of which, really curious to see where he ends up going on Thursday night in the draft. Anyway, Dariq Whitehead last offseason, foot fracture, had to have surgery, and was just never himself. In fact, had another surgery right here at the beginning of May to kind of fix and clean out some other stuff. And so still waiting on that. So that said, who knows what's going to happen with Aaron Bradshaw? Now, per Kentucky Sports Radio's Jack Pilgrim, he wrote for On3 that it is expected that this fracture will require surgery and that he will be out 4 to 6 months. Now, the human body does crazy things, sometimes speeding up, sometimes slowing down. But if that 4 to 6 month prognostication holds, on the short end of that, 4 months, that's late October. Games start November 6th, folks. On the late end of that, 6 months would be like Christmas week, right? Like today, as this show is dropping, it's June 20th. 6 months from now is December 20th. That dude might not be ready to, like, and even with that, is that 6 months and then you start getting into game shape? Is that 6 months, right? And you're already ready to go? There's not that level of specificity, and you just can't know. All I'm saying is you just can't say anything with any level of certitude at this point. But on the low end of that 6 months, they might not get him back until SEC play. So we're going to have to keep our eyes on this, is what we're saying. Interestingly, Pilgrim also had talked about how this injury is something the staff has known about for several weeks, but they thought it was just a sprain. Now, this, I'm not saying that to say, oh, they messed up, they let him keep playing, and now it's turned into a fracture. Sometimes even with your best efforts, you just don't know. Now, who knows? I mean, maybe there was a way they could have figured that out and just missed it, but whatever. Anyway, all this to say, I know there might be people who say, whatever, man, like, don't have surgery, just stop, heal up, and be ready for the season. And as much as I love college basketball, as much of a college basketball junkie as I am and will always be, like, part of why I do what I do on this show is just to be an advocate for college basketball and say, man, what a great sport this is. Come on, get on the bandwagon. Let's do it. At the same time, this young man has to do what is best for him. And if the NBA is his ultimate goal, and that's a place where he's got tens, hundreds of millions of dollars in potential career earnings waiting on him, as hard as it is for Big Blue Nation to swallow, and all of us as college basketball fans, frankly, if it means Bradshaw not playing this entire year so that his body is ready for a life in the NBA, that's tough, but so be it. And we'd have to be okay with that. Now, all that said, like it's not just Kentucky taking another hit. This front court, I mean, not having Bradshaw, potentially, who knows what's going to happen, but definitely not having Shibwe, definitely not getting Hunter Dickinson. And remember, Ugonna Onyenso was planning to transfer and ultimately came back, which is a great thing for Kentucky because right now it figures like unless they get Jesse Edwards from West Virginia to transfer or something, that Onyenso's the dude and the only dude, and you got to figure that out. So, man, just poor Kentucky. This is tough over and over and over again. Now, it is not all unfortunate news for Kentucky. They did get a little bit of good news over the weekend on Sunday, but boy, it's some perplexing good news. It feels like for the first time, Coach Cal is having to start to reach in recruiting, and we've seen it happen twice in the past couple weeks. What is going on there? We'll talk about it in just a second. But first, this episode of Locked On College Basketball is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Baseball season is in full swing, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Just go to fanduel.com/locked-on to join today. I don't know if I've ever said it on here, but I'm a big Braves fan. Grew up in Atlanta. Started really getting into baseball in 1990, the year before, or 91, when the Braves first won the division. So always been a huge fan. And so I'll just tell you right now, I'm making all the Braves bets if I'm betting on baseball, right? Join me. It's where the smart money's at. Or the Rays, man. You think the Rays are going to hang on? I'm curious to see. Anyway, don't miss your chance to snag a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to fanduel.com/locked-on to sign up. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball trademarks used with permission. All right. By the way, also, it is NBA draft week, and I want to make sure to tell you to not miss out on Locked On's NBA mock draft special, which is here and bigger than ever. Follow along the entire first round in a 6-episode ultimate mock draft experience that only we at Locked On can deliver for you. All the episodes are available now on our YouTube channel for Locked On College Basketball or on audio, wherever you listen to podcasts. And kind of cool, I had the opportunity to be on the anchor desk for this show as like the college basketball expert. Andy's in the show quite a bit as well, talking about different prospects. And so you'll see both of those faces of guys. Leaf Tulane, who's always on our show, plays a prominent role in this mock draft as well. So make sure to go check it out. It's great stuff. Now, let's come back to Kentucky getting some good news. I named off all those players that Kentucky got. And you might have been screaming at me as I named it off because I did not, and purposefully did not, name one of the freshmen that has committed, and that is Joey Hart, a 6'5" shooting guard that just committed to Kentucky over the weekend. Oh, and by the way, at 247 Sports, he is ranked 197th in the country. Now, obviously, when you compare that to every basketball player in the world, that is a high-level elite basketball player. But in terms of the type of player that Kentucky usually goes and gets, it's a far cry from what John Calipari does. Not to mention Jordan Burks. Now, there's some different things with him, but in terms of ranking and what people have seen, 172nd. Feels like, maybe does it feel like to you that Kentucky's reaching a little bit? Wow, right? Are you with me on that? Like, we're talking about a team that basically, if you're not top 40, don't even bother. Sure, come be on our team, but you're going to end up transferring next year. Or, you'll just be the 11th guy on the bench that never plays, regardless of how good you think you are. And you are very good. If you come to Kentucky, we've got 5 guys in the top 20 in the class. We don't need you 45th best player, much less the 172nd or 197th player. But Kentucky needs warm bodies. And so they're going out to get guys like Jordan Burks and Joey Hart. Now, are they going to have to rely on them, or are they, there's still possibilities. There's still guys out there that they can go and get, whether it's, maybe some of the guys from West Virginia. We'll talk more about that in just a minute. Whether it is grad transfers who can still hop in, whether it's any of the people still in the portal right now, there's possibilities out there. But Kentucky hadn't gotten them. They've missed Arthur Kaluma, Grant Nelson, also, any of these. We already mentioned Hunter Dickinson's name. It's just weird. It's weird. Now, here's what would be hilarious to me, though. Through this, wouldn't it be funny if these guys like Burks, guys like Joey Hart that just committed, became part of a resurgence for Kentucky basketball where they stuck around, developed, and turned into high-level college basketball players. There is a possible world where you get a return with guys like this that could be guys that stay and develop and just become Kentucky dudes. There's no reason to not think that something like that could happen. I mean, I know these guys are ranked much lower than this, but we're about to watch a couple of guys that were ranked outside the top 40 in their class, at least 3 that I can think of, get drafted on Thursday night in the NBA draft. Jet Howard was outside the top 40. Now, close to it, but he's going to be a first-round draft pick. You've got a couple others that are going to be first-round picks that were ranked like outside the top 80 in the class coming in. So there's no reason to think they couldn't develop, but it's a MO change for Kentucky and not by choice. Right? This is Coach Cal reaching and scrambling and finding what he can. By the way, at least as the time of this recording, there's still nothing concrete on Antonio Reeves, and that's weird. It's weird to me that we just aren't getting anything. There's rumors and speculation everywhere, like he's enrolling in classes at Illinois State, and so that tells us that he's not enrolled at Kentucky, and he's not dual enrolled at Kentucky. He's only enrolled at Illinois State. But there's closing is, like everyone is trying to postulate what's happening, but there's nothing of true actionable information coming out. It's weird, y'all. It is so weird to see what's going on. So that would be massive if Coach Cal could hang on to Reeves and get him back. But we'll have to see what happens. Now, we spent the entire show yesterday talking about the situation at West Virginia with Bob Huggins having to resign after his DUI and everything going on with that over the weekend. The saga carries on as expected. We will talk more about it and things that we learned on Monday and kind of where the program is going. We'll do that in just a second. All right, the West Virginia saga carries on. Bob Huggins, as you probably are well aware, unless you just haven't been paying attention to college basketball, didn't listen to or watch the show yesterday, Bob Huggins is retiring. And the guy we just talked about, John Calipari, is now the winningest active head coach in D1 college basketball. Now, here's where we're at. Things that we learned on Monday. This is probably just going to be an ongoing storyline for the next week to whatever it is as things unfold and we learn more. So we're going to do our part to keep bringing it to you, keep letting you know everything that we know. Andy and I suggested on yesterday's show, go back and watch it if you didn't, that the program needed to immediately circle the wagons and do everything they could to keep the roster together for the time being. Now, I think I said it in a way, if I remember correctly, of you got to get your coach hired right now, whether that is this national search you're talking about or just naming an interim, which it doesn't sound like they want to do, but to have somebody who can be that voice to say, guys, just give us a chance here. Circle the wagons and let's figure this thing out. And it sounds like what we projected on yesterday's show is exactly what happened. It wasn't with, interestingly enough, it wasn't with whoever's going to be named coach, and it wasn't with the administration of either the school or the athletic department. Instead, it was Celtics coach Joe Mazzula and Cavs GM Mike Gansey, these two guys who are talking to the West Virginia players and probably staff as well on Monday. And so this is just kind of looking like, hey, this is a quick injunction. Give us a little more time to get this figured out, but don't run away yet. You've got 30 days. Give us a chance. So according to Adam Zagoria on Zag's blog, or really just through his Twitter, what happened on Monday was this. Again, not from the source we expected, but one that makes a ton of sense. So Zags tweeted out at 4:14, at least my time, Quote, the West Virginia basketball team is currently on a Zoom with Celtics coach Joe Mazzula and Cavs GM Mike Gansey, two WVU products, who are urging them to keep the team together, end quote. Now, I saw some really, really dumb responses to this tweet. Like this one gentleman that said, responding to this with like, well, that's obvious that you want to keep the team together. This one dude said, quote, I'm trying to envision why anyone would tell WVU to blow up the roster at this time of the year, end quote. Dude, like that is missing the point of what they're saying. It's not urging them to keep the team together as opposed to blowing it up. What they're doing is saying to the players, give us a chance here. That I like, it's so clearly obvious that's what's happening. It's not, we think you should blow the team up. Nobody is saying that. This is the West Virginia community doing everything they can to hold on to these young men, both those who are already Mountaineers and those who have committed to the Mountaineers this offseason. So, homie, no one is saying to blow it up. You read the room totally wrong here. Mazzula and Gansey are saying this in an effort to get the players to not leave. And listen, I get it. When a coach leaves a program, players are going to leave too. And the NCAA will allow that. It's just what happens. But this is a different scenario because of the timing and how it happened. We, at this point, are essentially 20 weeks away from games. Not to mention, back that up for practices and your couple summer practices and things like that. Now, I know there's players still in the transfer portal that haven't committed yet. And so clearly, yes, there is time for these guys to leave West Virginia and find a home. There's plenty of time to do that. And yes, probably at least one, if not a couple of these guys are going to leave. I really don't foresee like a mass exodus, but it wouldn't shock me to see at least a couple say, it's going to be better for me to move on. But I'm going to argue again today exactly what these guys are trying to do with this Zoom call. You got to scratch, you got to claw, you got to do everything you can to hold on to these young men, to get every possible one of them that you can to stay committed to West Virginia. But here's how I think we have to approach this. Truly, here's the question. What response to Coach Huggins' resignation is in the best interest of each of these players? Is it going to be a better situation for them to stick around and stick it out? Or would it be a better situation for them to leave? Well, it depends. And that's the thing. I don't think the answer to this question is the same for every player. I think for some players, it does make sense to stick around, while for others, it will not. Now, part of this is if I'm a player, I'm demanding complete transparency from the athletic department with regard to the coaching search. I need to know what's going on, who you're talking to, what the timelines are, because that would be a critical factor to me. Is who would I be playing for if I stayed here? I need to know that, and you have to tell me or I'm out. Now, as Andy said yesterday, there's the option of you go into the transfer portal to check things out while knowing that, maybe you say to West Virginia, hey, I'm just checking things out, but I'm going to keep my eye on this. I'm going to see who you get and what's going on. So the coaching search is critical in this conversation. Secondly, it also depends on what the scenario at the other schools you're looking at are. What roles do they have? If, for example, if I'm a starter at West Virginia and it seems like playing in this program can still be decently fruitful for me and the coach is the right choice, then I might stick around. Or perhaps if transferring would be a step back for me, then I might stick around. But if I could go somewhere else and slot right into a scenario that is even better, maybe even equal, I might be out. Like think about it this way. Would you rather be a starter? Like, let's say you would play the exact same role at two schools. Would you rather be somewhere where the coach has had two major offseason gaffes, has just resigned, or go somewhere, play essentially the same role for some coach who's not going anywhere? I think I might make the jump. Here's the thing, though. I think transfers are in general going to be more likely to ultimately leave than would be guys that were already at West Virginia, particularly those transfers that would only have 1 year of eligibility left. And maybe even in that regard, you might have guys that have been at West Virginia their whole career or part of their career who only have 1 year of eligibility. That's like, I don't want to spend that on whatever this is going to be because we don't know. But here's one other thing that I want to bring up. That was another tweet from Zagoria, because this is something I said yesterday. Is I know that the story that's out there right now is that they're wanting to hire do a national coaching search, get a guy that's going to be our guy for the foreseeable future. I just want to throw my hat in the ring again for saying maybe not. I think that it would make a ton of sense to get somebody in that maybe is already in, that these players know and trust and believe in. You've got this great group already together. Let somebody work with them who's already been working with them, who already knows them. And then you buy yourself till, the coaching cycle carousel starts over again. You've got 9-10 months, whatever it would be. So because of that, here's something that Zagoria also tweeted that makes me think that even more. He says, quote, "The players remain very loyal to the current staff, and some could leave if the whole staff turns over," end quote. Now, there's a couple parts of that. If the whole staff turns over, so maybe if you bring someone in and they keep some of the staff, particularly Ron Everhart, who I, would put in as the interim right here, right now, without even thinking about it, then that could work. But as we said yesterday, it sounds like the university is more committed to getting the right person than they are to keeping the players. That's bold. That is a bold move. We'll have to see what goes with that, but we will. Now, again, here is where I think they should go. Get an interim for this year with this great group you have, keep them together, and then go get your guy in the next cycle. Because here's something else for me. Again, we're at late June at this point. We're in the 20s. There are probably some guys that would leave their current situation, particularly if it's like a mid-major or a less sexy high major, right? But let's say Andy Kennedy, who's part of the Bob Huggins coaching tree. He's at UAB right now, Alabama, Birmingham. Let's say he's willing to come. What bridges is he going to have to burn in Birmingham to leave right now so that he can come back? Because even if the guys you're targeting would jump ship at their current school, you're potentially putting them in a really bad situation there to come to your currently really bad situation in Morgantown, West Virginia. I just see a lot of wisdom in bringing somebody up from within and then giving yourself some time. Just makes sense to me. Well, we'll be back with you on Wednesday's show. Thanks so much for tuning in to Locked On College Basketball, making us your first listen or watch of the day. If you would, go leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or anywhere else you listen. Please don't also forget to subscribe to the show, smash the like button, and comment on the show. Be back with you tomorrow. But until then, apologies to the lawyer family. Go Wildcats, which actually makes sense today because we talked about Kentucky. Until tomorrow, peace.